Get ready for the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we are breaking down District 4 athletics and activities week in, week out. My name is Brandon Baney, and we are joined by Scott Burton. Just Scott today. No moniker, no fancy nickname. It's our last Prepcast of the school year, and we're just going to keep it straightforward today.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, and it's the second one in 2 days, and I'm thinking, let's throw a curveball at the Prepcast for the Magic Valley and go with my real name because, probably expecting some wonky nickname. Just not today. You're right. Last one, straightforward.
We're not always refined and classy here on the Magic Valley Prepcast, but when we are, Lord, we really class it up. So.
Yeah, no kidding, right? We were Lauren and I were talking at the state baseball tournament that man, if we could just put a camera in the press box and then charge a pay-per-view for behind the scenes stuff, that all that happens, dialogue included, when we're off the air, I tell you what, we'd make a little bit of coin there, my friend.
We'd premium.
Be having these podcasts on a beach someplace.
Yeah, what would happen is what you and Lauren talk about between innings would be so compelling. Sirius XM would come lure you away. You guys would host a show every day.
Yeah, right. Oh, one can hope. So,
yeah.
Anyway, it's finally time to take a breath, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get one last little sprint here to the finish line with all of this. I've got all my notes here, Scott. I know you've got yours as well, so we got a lot to get to. I will say really quickly, Scott, you mentioned it's your second Prepcast in the last 2 days. Scott, you were the broadcaster at the 4A state baseball tournament this past weekend, and there was a pretty cool story that's not necessarily Magic Valley related, right? It involves a kid from Pocatello, but this is a story that I thought everybody around the state should get to hear. And so you went one-on-one with Brody Birch from Pocatello High School.
Yeah, I did. And what a great kid he is. He has been nothing but respectful and polite and excited. And his story is just something that just doesn't come around very often. And if you have a chance to go watch that, go do it. It's something that is going to live in the Pocatello. I told him it's going to be in Pocatello lore forever, just because you don't hear about what he went through.
Yeah. Long story short, 2 championships in 2 different sports in 2 different cities, all in the span of about 5 hours this past Saturday, which is just wild. So yes, you can watch that interview on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, which is also where you can find this Prepcast each and every week. But as a special bonus for our audio listeners that subscribe to the podcast via Google, Apple, whatever, or listen at IdahoSports.com, I'm going to put that interview into the Magic Valley Prepcast feed as well. So on the audio side, you can also listen to that interview that Scott did, because I thought it was really good. So
yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic, and he was a great interviewee. Talked to us in a little bit of detail, and really kind of walked us through it. I mean, it really, when you posted it last night, just blew up, and it is continuing into the thousands and thousands of views already. So it's really popular right now. Go check it out.
Yeah, hopefully Sports Center or ESPN or somebody picks this up, because this just doesn't happen every day anywhere. So yeah, pretty cool story. But there were a lot of cool stories from the Magic Valley this past week as well. And so we are just going to dive right into it. Now, we're not going to cover every single tournament, every single result, because we would be here for 6 hours, because there's just so much that happens in championship week in the spring. So we're kind of going radio DJ here, Scott. We're playing the hits. All right. We're just
Yes. Well put.
Yeah. Well, first up on the hit list has got to be, and this was, I think Brody Birch from Pocatello was the biggest story of the weekend just because of what he pulled off. But outside of that, I think the biggest story, not just in the Magic Valley, but probably the state, was what Gatlin Bair did at the 4A state track and field meet in Meridian at Mountain View High School, where he basically took the record book and obliterated it in the short sprints.
Oh, no question. I mean, I think everybody knew that he was going to win going in. It was just going to be what kind of record will he set? I mean, this kid is not from this planet, as far as his ability goes. And, so he wins the 100, he wins the 200, and, he ran an overall state meet record, Idaho all-time best in the 200 at 20.41. And then in the 100, a 10.15, which puts him number 4 in the United States for the 100 and number 2 in the 200 as of like Saturday evening. So, I mean, not only is this kid obliterating the record books in Idaho, he is putting himself on a national map, and he is only going to get better once he continues on after high school. But I mean, if you haven't seen the video of him winning the 100, it's absolutely amazing, because I didn't know you could get lapped in the 100.
Yeah,
apparently you can. That is how far ahead he was of everybody else. It's truly amazing.
Yeah, pretty incredible. So not only does he have the new all-class records in the 1 and the 2, he set the 2 in the prelims on Friday and then ran a slightly slower time in the final Saturday. He still won both events. But like you said, now nationally ranked. And, everybody was making a big deal about Matt Miller, the offensive coordinator from the Boise State football team. He was there watching front row and center. And of course, Boise State is one of the schools that Gatlin has narrowed down to his list of final choices for where he wants to play college football at. And I think what people don't understand sometimes with Gatlin Bair, and, Cameron Anderson, his football coach, talks about this a lot, is the work that goes into it. You don't just show up and you're blessed with God-given abilities and you go run a 10, 15, 100. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, nutrition, sleep schedules, all of those things. And we've talked about it a lot throughout the year here on the Prepcast. And all of that hard work might shave off 3/100ths of a second, or 3/10ths of a second. So in track, especially in the 100, the differences are minimal, but it's a huge difference in the work that has to be put in to achieve times like that.
Oh yeah, no question about it. And just to avoid injury, because how many times do you see these high school kids not take care of themselves, whether it be stretching or, like you said, nutrition, sleep, all that kind of stuff plays a part. But Gatlin has remained healthy, and because of the way he takes care of himself, is, man, what a great senior season he had. I mean, he made stops at the Oregon relays, Clyde Littlefield, Texas relays, the BYU Invitational, and really kind of put his stamp on a national map, and everybody knows who he is. And I think there's a lot of people in Idaho that are really kind of on the edge of their seat just a little bit, try to figure out, where is this kid going to go? Because, when something like this comes around and you're getting, the recruitment that he's getting, and football is where he wants to go, right? That we just got done with the Colton Loveland deal, right? Here comes Gatlin Bair. There's a chance he's going to stay in Idaho. And I think all of Idaho is rooting for that.
Because that's never happened, right? Boise State is always like the bride left at the altar, where the top prospects flirt with them and then they go somewhere else. And that's fine, right? Go to the big schools. But if Gatlin does stay in state, I mean, he will be the first of his kind, a top nationally ranked prospect that stays in the home state to make Boise State better. And that would be a cool story as well. No matter where Gatlin goes, I mean, he's going to be phenomenal. And how about this, Scott? All those places you mentioned, Texas, Oregon, BYU, Invite, he never lost this year. He went undefeated in the 1 and the 2 this season. Incredible.
Yeah, going against some of the country's best.
Yeah.
And so when you are number 2 in the 200, number 4 in the 100, nationally, I mean, wow. Impressive.
Yep, pretty impressive. We did have 2 other individual champs from the 4A state meet. Stockton Stevens from Twin Falls. We got to cover him a lot during our cross-country coverage earlier this fall on IdahoSports.com. We actually had him on for a post-race interview, and he was a great kid to talk to. He wins the 2 mile, the 3,200. And then, Scott, of course, you're the athletic director at Jerome, and a Jerome Tiger. Keenan Blair wins the shot put at 58 feet. Even that is a big league throw.
Yeah, and he was flirting with a school record that was set back in 1980 by a guy named Gary Halsey that went on and played football at Utah State, had a little stint with Miami Dolphins. And that kid was a beast back in 1980, and nobody's been able to even come close, sniff it, whatever. Keenan was flirting with it. And but I mean, and you take a kid like Keenan, man, what a great kid he is. I mean, you like to see kids win, and you really like to see great kids win that are just good people. And Keenan is one of those guys. And he is moving on to, play football and participate in track at the College of Idaho. So he's got a good future ahead of him. And then Stockton Stevens, we talked about him on a broadcast, I believe earlier this year. It might have been last year. I'm not really sure, but there were nothing but great things to say about him as well. His teammates really had just the absolute best praises for him. So did his coaches, talked about his work ethic. And so it's no reason that winning happens to those kinds of kids, because they do it the right way.
Yeah, he shared the story with us after he won the cross country meet that Highland hosts every year in Pocatello, and we broadcast that on IdahoSports.com. And he came on for the post race interview and said basically, like, this is what I did as a kid. I would sprint from one end of my neighborhood to the other, pretending that I was in the closing 50 meters and a guy was chasing me, and I needed to give my absolute all. I mean, he's built his whole life up for this, and so
yeah. And that's funny because as kids, we always played that little game, but usually it was on the basketball,
right.
Floor, or outside shooting hoops, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we take the shot at the buzzer to win it all. And if we miss it, he was fouled. We did all that kind of thing. He just did it with a different sport.
Yeah.
But it was the same thing, same concept growing up, and that helps kind of prepare you a little bit. So good for him.
Yeah, pretty cool story there from the 4A state meet. Congrats to Stockton Stevens and Keenan Blair, and of course Gatlin Bair from Burley. Magic Valley well represented at the 4A meet. Let's go to the 3A state meet, where we had a double dipper. Graydon DeVries from Kimberly, Scott, wins the 1600 and the 3200. It's really hard to sweep those distance races because both are grueling affairs. The 1600 pretty much now is almost a sprint for all 4 laps. And so way to go, Graydon DeVries from Kimberly.
Oh yeah, no kidding. It's harder and harder to sweep those, like you said, and because they are completely different races. Obviously one's twice as long as the other. I'm a mathlete. I figured that out, but they are gruelers, and with the field of kids that are coming up, and it is becoming a fast race. And those are some good times. Stockton Stevens at 9:17, and then Graydon at 9:37. Those aren't bad, at all. I'm looking at 9:37. I'm thinking 9 hours 37 minutes. I can do that.
Yeah, I might need a little longer still to get the 8 laps in for that 2 mile. And then at the 1A meet, Scott, we had another double winner. This was from Cary, Riley Morey. He won the 2 and the 4, so he wins the 200 and the 400. Of course, he was part of that great football powerhouse that's been there, and we saw the speed on the football field where he had several long touchdown runs and receptions this year, and we see it on the track as well as he wins the 2 and the 4.
And those are great times that he had, 22.57 in the 200. And when you're thinking about comparison to Gatlin Bair, who's running 20.56, I mean, that's a 2-second mark, which is still significant. But at the same time, when you think about how head and shoulders Gatlin is above everybody else, Riley is in that second tier. And then you get to the 400 and he's almost a sub 50. That is bananas. Sub 50s are just ridiculous. And a lot of people, the best ones are hovering right around 50, 51. And those are pretty elite ones too, right? But man, Riley was some really good times, and congratulations to him, a double state winner.
Yeah, awesome to see from Riley Morey. Also from the 1A meet, James Kersey of Hanson won the shot put, 52 feet 3 inches. And Kyle Christensen of Valley, he was kind of the wire-to-wire leader in the long jump all year long. He wins the 1A championship in the long jump for Valley as well. So congrats to each of those athletes also. Let's go to girls track and field, Scott, where the big story, and we talked about it earlier in the season, was the dominance of this Raft River girls track and field program. They score 113.83 points, which is for 1A where there's like, literally 40 to 50 schools competing. That is a blowout. And way to go, Raft River, winning the 1A girls track title.
Yeah, you know what? And we did talk about this, at how dominant and deep this Raft River team was, and they did not disappoint. I mean, 113 points in a track meet is insane, but all the key players that we talked about, they came through. I mean, Libby Bowden is a repeat champion in the 100 meters, repeat 200 champion, set a state meet record in that, 25.11 is her time. And she also placed second in the long jump. So you look at the points that like Libby Bowden gave your team, ridiculous. And then we also talked about Abby Rex. She placed in the triple and the 300 hurdles. Allie Black, who's been, dominant all year long, girls 3,200 meter champion, placed in the 800, placed in the 1600, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, these are the girls that we talked about, and they stepped it up and they got it done. And they showed why Raft River is the deepest 1A girls team in the state by far.
Yeah, Allie Black was the 1A cross country champion this fall, wins the 3,200 in track. Nice little bookend there. Heidi Harper took third in the 400. Cassidy Ward was fourth in the shot put. Ashley Christensen fourth in the high jump. And so not only did Raft River have those champions at the top, but the trickle down as well. And you start adding it up and you see why Raft River ran away with the thing. It's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah. I mean, even their medley relay team won a state record, So, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, one after another. And track is just one of those things to where you get a bunch of athletes and they can all put up the points like that. And then you get them combined for one. Man, it just impressive.
So the biggest story, though, outside of Raft River's dominance as a team, was we had a pair of triple winners from the Magic Valley, which is, you think about Raft River and everything they were doing, for Shaylee Smith of Cary and Lexi Hudig of Valley to each go out and win 3 events. I mean, that's incredible that they were able to do that. The Magic Valley really cleaned up here at this 1A meet. Shaylee Smith won the high jump, the 300 hurdles, and she repeated as the 100 hurdles champ as well.
Wow. I mean, that truly is impressive. I mean, just to compete and be successful in 3 different events, let alone win them. I mean, that just speaks to the athleticism that some of these girls have. It's just really, really cool. I mean, Lexi, the pole vault, the long jump, and the triple. I mean, just an athletic girl. And then the ability to run the hurdles and the high jump, that tells you a little bit about her ability and her vertical and all that kind of stuff. Man, just phenomenal athletes. So great job, Shaylee, Lexi, Cary, Valley represented well.
Yeah, and along the way, Shaylee Smith set a new 1A state meet record in the 300 hurdles, 45.41 seconds. So more records continuing to fall at the girls' 1A state meet. Let's jump up to 4A, where Morgan Graham won 2 golds for Twin Falls. She won the long jump, and then she was part of the winning 4x4 relay team as well. So Morgan Graham from Twin getting double medals there. Cool story from the 3A meet. Scott Izzy Stockham of Gooding wins the pole vault. She clears 11 feet. Her older sister Ellie Stockham was a state champion in the pole vault for Gooding, and she's now pole vaulting at Idaho State University, where, of course, one of the greatest pole vaulters of all time, with Stacy Trujillo.
Yep. So, I mean, yeah, following suit, pole vault city at Idaho State. Be interesting to see what Izzy decides to do and follow in her older sister's footsteps or not. And I want to go back to the 4A really quick. Jerome's 4x2 won state in that relay as well. And I'd be run out of town if I didn't mention that. Yeah, so another great showing. The pole vault always scared me. There's just something that says don't put your butt above your head or bad things are going to happen. Because, I mean, I could just totally see myself trying to do that and heading back the other way, missing the mat completely. It would just not end well. So a lot of respect for the pole vaulters.
Yeah, I did track in high school, and we didn't even have pole vault because our school was on the lower end in terms of funding and money available and things like that, and we couldn't afford it. The pole vault equipment is expensive, so
Well, yeah, and now we're going to add javelin. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that's going to be a discussion to have down the road as well.
I will say I do. My school did have the javelin. Montana's had the javelin forever, and I loved it. It was my favorite event to do. So if it works monetarily, I think we should go for it because it's a good event for sure.
Yeah, now everybody's excited about it.
Yep. So and then finally at the 2A girls meet, Jessica Duran of Wendell wins the 2 mile as well. So we've got some distance dynamos from the Magic Valley here.
Yeah, I guess we do. She won the 3,200 in 11 hours and 28 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's my time.
Right.
Yeah. But again, another great performance from Jessica and Wendell in the 2A.
Yeah. And I'll have to double check here, but I believe Jessica Duran was also a member of the Wendell softball team. She was an outfielder on this year's softball team. And so we talked about Brody Birch doing the baseball track double dip. So did Jessica Duran. And, stopping down on that for a second, not every school lets their athletes do that. And so I think it's cool, man, when Pocatello or Wendell allows their athletes to go out and try to compete in multiple sports. It takes a lot of cooperation from the coaches to make it work because you're sharing an athlete for practices and competitions. But I say go for it if the school can make it work out.
Oh, no question about it. There's a few boxes that need to get checked there, and you hit some of them. Yeah, you've got to have communication and agreement from the two programs that these kids are athletes, not specialized players, because that has been such a big, point of contention in the coaching ranks is that no, you're going to specialize in basketball. You're going to no, they're not. They're kids, they're athletes, let them play. But the other thing is that the athlete has to understand the limitations of his or her own body, because you're going to be pushing it to an extreme, right? And so you got to make sure that you understand your limitations. And then, you've got to have the discipline to keep up with your studies, because you are going to be pulled in different directions. So there's a lot of boxes to check. And the kids that are allowed to do it are usually pretty successful at it because they do check those boxes. And there's no difference here, no difference with Duran and Brody. I mean, they're the same kind of kid. They're getting it all done. And I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, it's a really cool story when you can pull that off. And like you said, it does take a lot of hard work for sure. All right, let's talk golf, Scott. We had fall golf earlier this year with 5A, 4A, and then we had spring golf as well with 3A, 2A. Weather turned out to be perfect for state in the spring, which it typically is. And the weather was really good for the fall this year as well. We'll see if that continues moving forward or not. But let's go to boys golf. The 2A meet was at Sage Lakes Golf Course in Idaho Falls. They also hosted the 5A state meet earlier this fall. And Declo wins the championship with a total score of 647, 10 strokes ahead of second place Grace. Way to go, Declo.
Yeah, no kidding. And, it's funny with this golf thing because we know what kind of spring we all had. And, the 5As and 4A golf teams are going, yeah, that's right. It's why we played in the fall. Not a bad day at all in the fall that we played this past year, but spring never had it until the very end, and so it was a great way to wrap up with some good weather, but a miserable way to spend about 3/4 of your season in the crap that they had to deal with. So I'm glad that they finally got it done. And yeah, Declo, man, well done. That's a big margin of victory right there. And Sun Valley Community School finished in a 3-way tie for third, so they represented well. Kellogg and Genesis Prep, but they took third on a playoff, and then finished fifth overall. So another good showing there.
Yeah, that was a wild tiebreaker where each of those schools took their best golfer. And they said, okay, we're going to go play holes 3, 4, and 5. And whoever's got the best. And yeah, Sun Valley came out on the short end of that. But that was kind of crazy, a 3-way tie for third place on the team score, because that's kind of a weird thing to do there. But
yeah, they didn't go to a scorecard playoff or anything like that. They just went full on Caddyshack style, march them out there. Everybody's kind of going down the fairway with them. And that's a lot of pressure for a kid. I mean, it's hard enough to golf with people watching you. And I'm an avid golfer and I love it. But you know how kind of puckered up and shaky you get when people are staring at you. I can only imagine when there's something like this on the line, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah, so this was from the Coeur d'Alene Press. They had the report on this. Yeah, the three teams trekked back out for a playoff to determine places 3 through 5. And it was all 5 players from each team played the par 5 10th hole together. And so that's what it was. Everybody, so 15 golfers go out and they play hole number 10, and then they added up all the totals, and that's how they determined the tiebreaker. So yeah, a little Caddyshack style there. Yeah, it's pretty.
Tons of fun.
Yep. On the individual side, Declo's highest placer was Jackson Smyer. He took 3rd with a 146. Alex Gailey finished 6th overall. And then we had Carson Lemoyne of Wendell finish 7th, and Jack Verhaeg of Sun Valley finish 10th. So of the top 10 slots, 5 of them were from the Magic Valley.
Yeah, very cool. Speaks very highly of the golf around here. And there's some really good golfers in the Valley here. When you start talking golf in, like, especially 4A, I mean, Twin Falls and Canyon Ridge, because they're in Twin and they've got other courses and the pros and everything, I mean, they develop golfers very, very well, and it just sort of expands out. And Declo, Wendell, they've got some quality golfers there as well.
Yep. 3A tournament. This is boys at the Blackfoot Golf Course. Kimberly wins the state championship. And you talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Scott, where Kimberly as a school won every single district championship they could in the spring. Baseball, softball, track and field, tennis. I don't know if they do tennis or not, but golf. They swept all the district titles, boys, girls, didn't matter. What a spring for Kimberly. And we're going to talk more about their softball, baseball teams coming up here. But then the boys go out and win the 3A state meet as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's the year of the Bulldog, and it sounds like something that Sugar Salem usually does, that year that a couple of years ago where they just kind of ran the gauntlet on everybody. That's what Kimberly's doing this year, and it's exciting times to be over there. And they've got they've always had a really good golf program, Kimberly has. And so, yeah, with them winning that, and we'll get to softball and baseball later, but they're right in the mix for those as well.
And the margin of victory, Kimberly won by 67 strokes over second place Homedale. I mean, that is a blowout.
Of epic proportions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like taking an entire golfer away. It's just insane, that margin of victory. That's how good Kimberly was this year at golf.
Yeah, the individual race was a lot closer. Toby Hyder of Kimberly is your individual champ. 2-day total of 144. He finished 2 strokes ahead of the second place guy. And even Kyler Kelly from Buell, who took 3rd, he was only 5 strokes behind Hyder. So this was a nail biter throughout, and Hyder made enough putts to get it done.
Yeah, and that's the thing you're going to find with these smaller schools in golf is you are going to find that.
What can I do for you?
Got the, hey, hang on.
You got your intercom turned on there, Scott.
I got my radio turned on, and I guess when you're kind of playing administrator too, it's you got to be on call. But what I was saying was one of the differences you find in, like, the small school golf versus the big school golf is just the depth. They're going to have fantastic players. They're just not going to have as many of them. And so if you can get, like what Kimberly had, several good players on the same team, you will run away with it. Not to say that, these other schools didn't have great players. They just didn't have as many of them to comprise the team. And that's really the only difference.
Yeah, so Hyder was your champ. Jamison Harper took 6th. Joe Hopkins took 7th, all from Kimberly. And then on the girls' golf side, Kimberly girls nearly won the state title. They nearly did the double dip in boys and girls golf. This was at Blackfoot Golf Course as well. But Kimberly finishes 4 strokes behind a very good Bonners Ferry team to fall in the 3A race. This has kind of turned into a budding golf rivalry where 2 years ago, Bonners Ferry won the title very narrowly over Kimberly. And then last year, Kimberly won it very narrowly over Bonners Ferry. And then this year, the pendulum swung back to Bonners Ferry.
Yeah, when it's that close, that every player's sitting there going, all right, how many putts did I miss that I should have? Or did I jack that one out of bounds? Or what would have happened if? and you never know. But yeah, you're right. It's turning into quite a rivalry with Bonners Ferry and Kimberly. And who would have thought Bonners Ferry and Kimberly would be in a rivalry? But they are in girls golf.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun to watch. Ellie Stastny took second overall, 159, 6 strokes behind the champion from Bonners Ferry, Gatlin Bair, and that's probably the difference right there, right? I mean, it trickles down, but that right there, 6 strokes, you lose by 4, you flip that, and Kimberly's probably winning back-to-back titles. Allie Stastny finished 5th for Kimberly as well, and Ava Harper took 9th for the Bulldogs there at the 3A Girls State Golf Meet. All right, let's go to softball. More Kimberly talk. Here we go. Kimberly wins their first softball championship since 2010. It's their 4th title overall. And we talked about coming into state. The top 2 seeds were Kimberly and Gooding, and each of them reached the final 3.
They did. And Kimberly, no surprise, they were just cruising all along. And if they didn't win, I think that would have been a bigger shock. But they played so well. And, Gooding, they did have a great showing. They took 3rd, and there's nothing wrong with that. They were, they lost in an upset to number 7 Marsh Valley and in the opening round. And so they had to kind of fight their way back and to the 3rd place game against Kimberly. And, and Kimberly had fallen to that same team. Number 7 Marsh Valley is not a number 7 Marsh Valley. So they showed well. Gooding and Kimberly both did.
Yeah, so basically, Gooding loses to Marsh Valley right away in the 2-7 matchup. Marsh Valley then runs it all the way through. They win over Kimberly in that undefeated semifinal, 7-1 on Saturday. So now you've got Gooding and Kimberly lives on the line, fighting in that 3rd place game. And of course, it was a classic. After 7 innings of regulation, we're tied at 6-all. We're tied after 7, of course, 6-all. And then we go to the top of the 8th. Gooding scores twice to take an 8-6 lead, but so does Kimberly. We move to the 9th. And I didn't know this in softball, Scott, but in extra innings, you start with a runner at second base, like in Major League Baseball. So that was new to me. I didn't know that going in. And so we get to the bottom of the 9th inning. Gooding doesn't score on the top of the 9th. Bottom of the 9th, Kimberly's got the runner at second, moves over to 3rd on a ground out. It wasn't even a ground out. It was a bunt. The catcher tried to go to 3rd to get the lead runner. Runner was safe, so runners were at the corners. And then Emily Hanchy singles home Allie Unger to give Kimberly the walk-off 9-8 win. And you're like, boy, that probably took a lot out of them, going 9 innings to beat your biggest district rival. Well, now you're back in the championship where you not only have to beat Marsh Valley once, you got to beat them twice in a true double elimination tournament. And they did it in pretty dominating fashion, 12-2 and 13-2. What a marathon for the Kimberly softball team, coming all the way back through to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could work a couple of different ways. It could take a lot out of you, or it can give you momentum. And apparently it gave Kimberly momentum that they needed. And they just got on a roll, and they were the best team there. But they almost didn't get to hoist the trophy as the best team because they took the one of the worst paths possible, but one of the most exciting as well.
Yeah. So congratulations to Kimberly and Gooding, both representing very well at the 3A state softball tournament. So we talked about Marsh Valley, the 7 seed in the 3A, getting on a Cinderella run. Must be something about that 7 seed, because at the 2A tournament, Declo comes in as the 7 seed, and I think pretty roundly dismissed by most people that were kind of observing. And hey, great, Declo won their little 2-team conference, and here they come, the sacrificial lamb for mighty St. Mary's, who's got the best pitcher in the state, Tacey Watkins. She routinely strikes out 17, 18 batters a game. She's thrown multiple no-hitters, a couple perfect games this year, and yet in the first round, St. Mary's commits 12 errors, and Declo pulls the 8-3 upset win, and from there they were off like a rocket ship, Scott.
Yeah, and what they did is they put the ball in play, and that's what you need to do. You can't win games if you're not getting bad on the ball, and they did that, and they did. You're right. They took advantage of 12 errors. I mean, you can't win games 12 errors. And St. Mary's was the number 2 seed, and they just did not play like it. But I think the key to that is Declo was not striking out. They were putting the ball in play. And if you do that, you've got a chance. And so what a huge win for the program as the number 7 knocking off the number 2.
Yeah, sophomore Jacoby Nebeker led the way, 3 doubles, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. So they've taken out number 2 St. Mary's. Now they got to play number 3 Nampa Christian in the next round. They win a tight one, 5-4. They're led by a freshman in this game, Tegan Wickel. She hits a home run, has 2 RBIs in the victory, and then they get to Saturday in this undefeated semifinal against the number 1 team, Malad, the heavy favorite coming in, and yet they nearly knocked off the Dragons. Malad wins on a walk-off in the bottom of the 7th, 7-6. It knocks Declo into that third place game where it's Nampa Christian again. We already beat these guys once. They win the third place game 11-6. Sophomore Sage Wickel leads the way with 4 RBIs and 3 runs scored. And then they get to the championship game against Malad. And we talked about how, Kimberly had the momentum to fuel themselves to a title. I think Declo just ran out of gas in that championship game against Malad as they fell 9-3, but it was an incredible run for the Hornets.
Oh man, what a great shot in the arm for the program too. And just something to kind of build upon, and doesn't matter what seed you are, just get to the tournament because anything can happen. And Declo went on an incredible run that nobody saw coming. And they're headed in the right direction. That was so fun to watch and see.
Best news for Declo, those 3 players that led the way in those 3 wins: sophomore Jacoby Nebeker, freshman Tegan Wickel, sophomore Sage Wickel. So it's young players that were doing the heavy lifting. Declo's set up for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I think we even mentioned that in an earlier podcast about how young this Declo team was, and so much to look forward to. And this is going to do nothing but give them that little taste of what it feels like to almost be number 1, and that little hunger to get back there.
Yeah. Let's go to tennis, boys tennis, where last year Wood River won the 4A championship in a squeaker, right? They won by 2 points with like 28 points total, I think, something like that. This year, they repeat as champions. A little bit more breathing room this year, Scott, 51.5 points. Bishop Kelly way back in the rearview mirror with second place and 31 points. And I think on behalf of everybody in the state of Idaho, thank you, Wood River, for knocking off Bishop Kelly in something.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I mean, I remember, running the district tournament here and just seeing all these Wood River guys and like, man, these guys are going to do really well. And it was an all Wood River final in boys doubles, Bestie and Schwartz taking on Griswold and Bocabella. And I remember watching those guys play at district, and it's like, man, these guys are really, really good. And then Sabina took third place in boys singles, and I remember watching him, and he beat Century's Daniel McGee. And, even Twin got into the mix too, with Brett McQueen and Noah Cox taking third in boys doubles as they beat the Lakeland duo of Andres and Hannah. But, that Wood River tennis program and those kids up there. I mean, we mentioned this somewhat in another podcast, I believe, and I know Lauren Jensen and I talked about it when at the state baseball tournament. Wood River is just a different animal. I mean, there's sports that they just excel in that maybe aren't so mainstream, so you're not going to hear them so much in the football and basketball. Every once in a while, they had a great baseball year, but the sports that they are really, really good at are tennis and soccer, and they even have a mountain biking team, skiing, hockey, because we talked about, those baseball players, they were all on that national championship hockey team, and so that just shows you just the different makeup that is in Wood River. And so for them to be dominant in tennis, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, congratulations. And of course, their neighbor right there up in the Sun Valley is the community school. And it's kind of the same sports, right? Soccer and tennis and skiing for the community school as well. So no surprise that the Cutthroats win the 3A boys tennis championship as well. 57 total points. Parma takes second with 41. And so the Sun Valley bringing home a pair of tennis titles.
They did. Mark Harlan led the way with the boys singles title, defeated kid from Parma in straight sets, 6-3, 6-2. So walked away with that one. And then, even in boys singles, they took a fourth place with Charles Goodyear. So, you're right. It's almost like Wood River Light when it comes to that. It's just smaller school is all. But yeah, the same kind of excellence in these sports. And not to mention that the Sun Valley boys doubles team of Walker Payton, Beckett Gates took second overall as well. So some really good tennis at the community school.
And the Cutthroats nearly pulled off the double dip in boys and girls tennis, 3A state tennis meet on the girls' side. They fell by 2 points to Parma. Parma had 34. The community school had 32. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is, because it's just one match flipped going a different direction, and you get to the double dip. And the double dip's a lot of fun. It just doesn't happen very often. We've seen a lot of schools get there. As a matter of fact, we saw a lot of schools this spring have that happen to them. And it's just so hard to pull off. But, some good performances there. I mean, Whitney Janata and Chloe McGowan, they won the girls doubles championship over Roundy and Tubbs from Fruitland. So there was some state championships given out there. And they also won the mixed doubles title. Gretel Huss and Campbell Spoor defeated, the pair from Fruitland and in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2. And then not to mention that in the girls singles championship, Jordan Hicks of Declo brought home a state title, defeating Coeur d'Alene Charter 6-1, 6-4. So Declo showing some tennis skills too.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting, I thought, for Jordan Hicks from Declo. What a cool event that was. And you mentioned the teams that could double dip, Scott. I don't know if you knew this or not, but in baseball and softball, we had possibilities 5A all the way down to 2A of the double dip. Owyhee did win the baseball and softball titles in 5A. Malad did the same in baseball and softball. In 3A, you have the exact same championship matchup. Kimberly and Marsh Valley played for the baseball title. Kimberly and Marsh Valley played for the softball title, and it was the same thing in 4A, Scott. Pocatello and Skyview did battle in softball. Pocatello and Skyview did battle in baseball. That's just kind of a weird, quirky thing that happened this year.
It really was weird when you look at that, because that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, hardly ever. And, I don't know if there was a full moon or planets were aligned, or, somebody did some sort of ritual or something, but it was pretty freaky. And then, for the 4A deal, I mean, you had Pocatello and Skyview battling it out less than half a mile away from each other on the CSI campus. So if you were from either one of those towns, then man, Twin Falls CSI campus was the place to be, because you had both of them going for state titles right next to each other.
And I think the baseball game, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. I think the baseball game got over before the softball game, because Skyview had to come back through and beat Pocatello twice, which they did. And that second game, I don't think started until about 6:00 Saturday night. It was kind of the last game we were all waiting on to see, all right, who's going to win this thing, this 4A softball championship. And so, it was kind of interesting to see that unfold in real time.
Yeah, it was. And we were giving updates at the baseball game, and then pretty soon I guess some of their softball teams showed up, and then they had to go back, and it was just, back and forth, and we had fans that were kind of going back and forth through the whole thing. And you could just see and feel the excitement from both Skyview and Pocatello fans, because they knew that they had a chance to double dip or win, and it didn't work out that way. Skyview winning softball and Pocatello winning baseball, but boy, it was a pretty exciting Saturday at CSI.
Yeah, works out when you're all in the same city, but of course all the spring events are spread out, so sometimes parents got to make those hard choices. For example, at the 1A state baseball tournament, Scott, I was covering Glens Ferry, of course, from District 4. They were there at state. They were playing in a loser out game on Thursday against Idaho City, which they lost in a tight game. But talking to Casey Martinez, the coach for Glens Ferry before the game, his son Parker Martinez, a senior, it was his 18th birthday on Thursday at the state tournament. He got the start on the mound on his 18th birthday. And basically, Casey Martinez is a really positive guy. He's always a glass half full kind of guy. And, after they lost out, they went 2-0. He said, hey, at least now I can go back home and watch my daughter, Taylor Martinez, pitch for Glens Ferry softball. She threw a no-hitter earlier this year. And so it was kind of interesting to see,
Yeah.
we took shout outs, during the game from people on both sides, Idaho City, Glens Ferry, send them in and we'll get them on the air. And,
Mhm.
we had the Martinez family watching, from softball, they were watching baseball and vice versa. At one point we had the mayor of Glens Ferry send in a message to us and is like, "Hey, I'm here watching the baseball team compete. Let's go." It even had the official letterhead, from the desk of mayor, such and such.
Oh, nice.
It's cool.
Nice. Oh, that is so fun. And that's one of the cool things again about small towns is everybody gets involved. Everybody's invested. And I mean, we have had over the years so much fun with those small towns, especially when we open up the inbox and get that banter going, because they love to write in, and including the mayor of all people. So very fun. I'm sure that was a blast for you guys.
Yeah, and we got lots of like, "Oh, hey, this is Mr. So-and-so's, 5th hour math class
Yeah.
we're all watching." And there wasn't much learning going on at Glens Ferry High during the
No,
game.
we had the same thing. We had a Pocatello 12 and under, 13 and under team email us. They were all watching. They sent us pictures of all the boys laid out in their uniform on the floor watching, and then they sent us another picture of our broadcast up on the big screen. And so we were just kind of having some fun with them as well. And, those are the kinds of things that make these tournaments a ton of fun. And you get to, every once in a while you learn a little bit of an, informational nugget that you wouldn't know otherwise. And again, it goes right back to what we do so well. And that is go beyond the box score. I mean, and so these interactions that we have, they're so much fun. They develop such great relationships, and they are tons of fun because, I mean, I remember, for example, we had Gooding volleyball over at our place, and I think I had mentioned this on a podcast like eons ago, and one of the Gooding girls spilled a drink in front of their bench, so we kind of shut everything down, and I am not just the AD, I'm the janitor that day, and so I go get a mop and I'm doing whatever, and then I'm down on my hands and knees doing this, and one of them kind of leans in and says, "Hey, we all watch the podcast." And I just kind of look up, and that whole bench is smiling at me, and I look at their coach, and they go, "The entire town of Gooding watches it." And so we had a ton of fun knowing that information, and that I was going to mention something on it the next time we shot, and we did. And but those are the kinds of things that make it so much fun.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about, is sharing the stories of these incredible young men and women, these great coaches, community leaders. That's why we do it. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's been great. We've had a lot of good stories throughout the year here as we're wrapping up our 22-23 school year here on the Prepcast. We've done 34 of these bad boys, Scott, throughout the school year.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
Wow. Yeah, we're itching closer to 100 episodes in the 2 years that we did this, right? I mean, we're getting there.
Yep.
So, wow, pretty impressive, and it's still getting a lot more momentum and traction and popularity. So we're glad to do that.
For sure. Well, let's wrap up with what happened at state baseball, 3A state tournament. We talked about Kimberly Marsh Valley played in softball. Kimberly won the title there. Same matchup in baseball, but Marsh Valley comes through with the win. Kimberly had quite a ride at this state baseball tournament. They lose to Marsh Valley in the championship game in 8 innings on a walk-off hit from Stanton Howell. He's the son of head coach Kent Howell. And so Marsh Valley wins 5-4 on a walk-off. But, Kimberly needed a walk-off of their own just to get to the championship game. They get past Timberlake in the first round, 8-3. And then they're playing Sugar Salem, everybody's arch nemesis in 3A, in the semis. And this was a really tight game. In fact, they went into the bottom of the 7th, Scott, and Kimberly was down a run, 8-7. It was a pretty incredible comeback.
Yeah, it was. And then you kind of figure what they had to go through to get that run, because they had the bottom of their lineup coming up, the 7, 8, 9 hitters. And, that's a big deal. You don't want to get to the top of the order, but Sugar made the cardinal sin of walking the leadoff guy. And so they put the number 7 on with a walk. And then number 8, Hudson Flameling, he singled on the first pitch he saw, came out swinging. He's like, "I'm not sitting around, I'm swinging away." And he did. And so now there's first and second with nobody out. And then they get a strikeout, and now it's the top of the order. And then River Chadwick hit the first pitch he saw to left field for a single. The bases were loaded with 1 out. Garrett Nelson comes up. He had a slow roller to the shortstop, and then Sugar got the out at second base, but Nelson sprinted and avoided the double play. And that's the little hustle plays that help win games and ultimately win state championships or whatever, and which allowed Phelps to score the tying run and send the game to extra. So very exciting. A double play just about ended it all, but a little hustle saved the day. And then, bottom of the 8th, you can take it from there.
Yeah, well, I was going to say real quick to the bottom of the 7th, and Logan Green and Glenn Jones, our 3A baseball broadcasters, did a great job of kind of talking through the play. Sugar went for the big risk, big reward, right? Bases loaded and a ground ball to short. You can go home and get the force out there for out number 2. But Sugar decided, we're going to win this game right here with a double play, and Garrett Nelson sprinted to avoid it. And that allowed the tying run to score. It's one of those in the moment things that I'm sure the shortstop for Sugar's like, man, wish I could have that throwback. I probably should have gone home instead of trying to go for the double play. But that's what makes baseball such a fun game.
Yeah. And I think most of the time everybody would have gone home with that. Stop the run. And, but no, I love the moxie of just saying, you know what? No, we're going to turn 2 here and we're going to end this thing. I love that part of it, but you're right. High risk, high reward. But then in the bottom of the 8th, Zane Ford led off for Kimberly. And then he was hit by a pitch. So here we go again, putting that leadoff guy on without having earned it. And so many times that leads to trouble. And it did, so McCray Bruning came in to pinch run. And after scoring the tying run, Ty Phelps drove in the winning run on a fly ball to center. That was dropped. So an exciting end, not really. Sugar kind of imploded a little bit, but you take what you can get. And that was an exciting game, and I'm sure that was fun to call for our guys.
Yeah, how about Ty Phelps, number 7 hitter in the lineup? He scores the tying run and then drives in the winning run. So think about that. Kimberly batted around between those last 2 innings. That's incredible. Yeah.
I mean, bases loaded, and we had a chance to get more, but they got the one to send it into the extras, and it's the bottom of the lineup that got it done. So good for them.
Yeah. And then we'll wrap up with the 4A state tournament where, Twin came in as one of the teams we thought, had a chance to really challenge for this thing. They had the pitchers, they had it all lined up. And then stupid Bishop Kelly comes in like they always do and just took a stick of dynamite to those plans and blew it up. But you were there, Scott. What happened in that opening round game?
It was a really good pitching matchup. Obviously, Twin's going to throw Hardesty, and then Cooper Cameron went for Bishop Kelly. But I don't think that Hardesty really had his best stuff. He has been so dominant all year that I just think that he really didn't have his best stuff. I mean, they lost, 4-3. 3 of those runs for Bishop Kelly, 2 in the 5th, and then 1 in the top of the 7th. And Twin just didn't have an answer. They went into the final, couple of frames, and they just could not generate any base runners. They left 2 runners on in the 7th, and they just couldn't get the timely hits that they needed. The offense really wasn't there. There wasn't a ton of run support. And, and Twin Falls came in with the highest batting average of anybody in that tournament, 392, I believe. And then, they did manage 8 hits to, Bishop Kelly's 5, but it was about when the hits happened. Did you get men on? Did you leave men on? It's all about the timeliness of it, and Twin just couldn't get it done that way. And Hardesty threw well, just don't think he had his best stuff.
That's what makes state so great, no matter what the sport is, because you could have a juggernaut from a league come in, and maybe that league wasn't as strong as some of the others. And that's where we ultimately sift out, okay, which conferences really were the best this year and which ones were a little down. And I think in 4A baseball, certainly you could say, all right, District 3 had the heavy hitters. We almost had an all District 3 final with Skyview and BK, right? Pokey needs a walk-off to beat BK. And we talked about it on our preview. Columbia, I thought, was also one of the 8 best teams this year in 4A baseball. They didn't get to state because there's only 2 spots available from their district. So,
yeah, well, we talked about it too. It's about getting hot at the right time. I mean, Bishop Kelly came in with a number 6 seed, and they played every bit as well as a 1 or 2. because like you said, they had Pocatello dead to rights up 6-1 fairly late in the game. And then 2 outs in the 5th, I believe, 1-2, boom, boom, out. Pocatello just caught fire with 2 down. And they did it again in the next inning. And then it goes to extras. And I mean, Bishop Kelly is a really good baseball team. And they showed it, even though they ended up losing to Pocatello in that semifinal. They easily could have played and won back-to-back state title because they were the defending champs coming in.
Yeah, so it was a wild 4A. The 4A and 3A state tournaments, especially this year, just every game seemed to have just drama and high stakes. And those were 2 really good tournaments to watch unfold. So
yeah, it was. And the funny thing about some of that 4A too is, I mean, we saw a no-hitter, and we also saw Brody Birch take a perfect game into the 7th inning before losing the perfect game on an error. And then 2 batters later, a hit, and then that was the end. They pulled him out. But, there's storylines and drama everywhere in baseball, and that's what makes the game so much fun. Not just, who wins and losses, but the strategy, how are they going to pitch a kid? Where's the defense lined up? Small ball, they're going to bunt the kid around. What are they going to do? They're going to turn a double play to try to end it. What are they going to do? And the strategy of the game, the little things of the game is just what I love about baseball. And Lauren and I got into that quite a bit in the broadcast, baseball 101 at times. And golly, so much fun.
Yeah, it was a blast doing all of our state baseball coverage on IdahoSports.com. If there are any fans out there and you want to go back and watch any of the games that happened on demand, you can buy a copy of the game, and then it's yours to keep forever. You can, and that's really, if you've got a player that played on one of these teams, how cool is that going to be? You download a digital copy of the game, you have it forever. You can put it on a DVD, thumb drive, whatever you want to do. And then, 10, 15, 20 years later, they can pull it out and go, oh yeah, hey, here's the state championship that we won, way back when. It's kind of a cool deal.
Oh, absolutely. And if I were playing, I would own those things. Oh my gosh, it'd be a no-brainer. Just didn't have that kind of technology back when I played. I've got 2 boxes of 8mm film of all the football games I played. And I just got I have nothing to play it on. It's almost like a DVD, right? I have a box of DVDs in my garage. And I'm like, oh man, I remember that movie. That was pretty. I have not a DVD player in the house to play anything. I don't even think my computer has one. It's like technology is just a little different than when we grew up, but those video files, those will always last. So I highly recommend getting them.
Yep. And you can find that at IdahoSports.com under the game streams tab. All right, Scott, we did it. Another school year in the books. And now we head into off-season mode where we won't be as steady and consistent. We want to enjoy our summer vacation a little bit, but
right.
We'll pop back in time to time, might have a guest or 2 on the Prepcast. And then Scott, I also wanted to do maybe a couple of big roundtable discussions where we bring you on and our North Idaho guy and our East Idaho guy, bring on all the experts to talk about maybe some big Idaho topics, like state tournaments and reclassification, and do some state of the union type stuff as well.
Oh, that would be awesome. This is the time of year we have to get a little creative. Because there's just not a lot happening anymore. And, I remember last summer we covered a couple of stories. We had, like you said, we had some guests on to tell some of their stories. And so, yeah, if you're out there listening and you've got one of these stories that we need to hear, let us know. We'll be happy to investigate it and do what we can to push that out. And the roundtable would be phenomenal. We just got to find some issues. The new basketball free throw issue is something we could talk about down the road. That's coming. Shot clock will be in effect. Javelins getting tossed around, no pun intended. So there's some things that are happening.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about the player transfer thing. We did that in the fall and got feedback on both sides on that, but I think we have to revisit it. Another very high profile player transferred from one 5A Boise school to another 5A Boise school that seems to get a lot of really good players that transfer. And I'm not going to say any more than that, but
yeah, you don't need to.
it's already happening, the undercurrents,
Yeah.
and there's maybe legislation that is going to allow open enrollment. We'll know a lot more in June after the next IHSAA meeting as well.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that's gotten on the radar in bolder print, because you can't ignore it anymore because it's just happening. And that's fine if we want to let it happen. I'll save a lot of this for that discussion, but it is definitely something that needs to be given some attention.
Yep. So stay tuned throughout the offseason for some good offseason content here on the Magic Valley Prepcast. Easiest way is to subscribe. Hit the subscribe, hit the little bell icon on our YouTube channel, or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, etc., subscribe to the podcast. And then that way, every time we do a new episode, boom, it's delivered right to you. You don't have to check in every week to see if we did an episode or not. So if you subscribe to the podcast, every time we do a new episode, you'll get it. And that's easy. That's one less thing you got to worry about in your life. So definitely subscribe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Scott, as always, another great season of the Magic Valley Prepcast. Thanks for all the hard work you do. Really. I mean, that's what makes the show go. So.
Brandon, you're the legwork, man. So appreciate all the prep that you do as well. And I think we make a pretty good team on this.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and the feedback we get from the schools has been great. And so we want to continue it into year 3. But for one final time in the 22-23 school year, thanks for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast. For Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Baney. See you this summer on IdahoSports.com.